Hi guys, if you don't know me, my name is Jake and the channel you're watching, 787 Dude, is about planes and aviation, and in today's video I'll be talking about how planes actually fly, and yeah, so let's get into the video. So I will talk about obviously how planes actually fly, also how engines work, and also what winglets are for and what they are. So I'll start off with the general plane, and I've got three models today. I've got my 787, my British Airways that you've seen in many of my videos. I've got my Virgin Atlantic 747, my oldest plastic model that I have, actually my oldest model overall, and the newest edition of my Emirates A350. And if you want to see me unbox the Emirates A350, then you can go watch my video on unboxing this aircraft. It's a 1 to 200 scale from Dubai. So I've got three different aircraft to compare them, because obviously the 747 is obviously our oldest aircraft here, with the 787 being in the middle and the A350 being the newest. But overall, the 787 and the A350 capabilities are very close together. So how come like the 787 come nearly 10 years before the A350, but yet they still have some of the same capability? Obviously, they still make 787s a lot because they're very popular. Same with A350s. Airbus has got over 1,000 Airbus A350s to deliver. That's crazy. Anyway, also this is the last video before the Madeira series. So the Madeira series start next Sunday, where I'll be packing for Madeira, start packing, because obviously I have school from Monday to Friday, so it's going to be quite hard to pack and that, so it only gives me the weekends and a little bit of time after school to pack. So anyway, so we'll start with my favourite 787. How do planes fly? Well, obviously they're all very similar of how they fly. I mean, they all fly, so they all work the same. But in my last video I mentioned how the wings give the aircraft lift, which they do. So I thought I would do a little example on my thingy board. I use the back as a whiteboard. So as you can see, this is the shape of a wing. If you cut a wing in half, this is what you'd get, and I'm sorry the light is reflecting on the whiteboard. That's very annoying. This is what you'd get. So as you can see, the wing isn't like a straight flat line like some people think it is. It's a curved shape as such. So instead of it being like a rectangular box like that's really bad, but it's a kind of like a triangle, like a really flat triangle that then goes round, if you something like that, like a bullet as such. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the shape. If you know what the shape is actually called, then comment down below. But these little dots here represent air particles. This is just, obviously you could draw it all around and stuff. But see, the air comes in and it splits in half. So some go to the top, some go to the bottom. Oh, maybe I should face it while I'm doing it. That would be a better idea. So it comes in, the air particles, the plane's flying along. So for example, 787 is flying along, ooh, and then, but when obviously the air's all around the aircraft, so which means you get the air particles come along and they split in half. So this, the bit that goes over, doesn't produce any lift, but this is the stuff that goes over. Think of it like cold air. It's kind of like cold air, although the stuff that goes over makes shock waves, which means, so for these shock waves, I'll talk about them when we get onto winglets, but the shock waves can make a flight a bit more turbulent, and the higher shock waves you have, it can disrupt the plane. And that's also why you see the horizontal stabilizers above the main wing, and there's a very important reason for that. That I'll get onto later as well, while we're probably doing winglets as well. So, all this hot air that gets collected underneath the wing. Now, obviously, hot air rises, so all this hot air goes up like that, and it pushes on the bottom of the wing, which is flat. So, because it pushes up, it means that it generates lift, pretty much. So all this hot air, it pushes the wing up like that. So when you use the elevators, it's just the lift's already there. You know, that's why you have to go a certain takeoff speed, so 140 knots, 145 knots to be able to take off. Because obviously you need enough air passing through the wing to give it enough lift. That's also why they use flaps on takeoff and landing. Although the flaps they use on takeoff are, so it's the same, obviously it's the same flaps. They set to 15 or 10 degrees, and this just helps the plane generate more lift. Because if you think about it, so your flap is there. Okay, well that's a very big flap actually. Your flap would be about there. Let me just draw it here. Flap would be about there, which means now you've got that, which means it creates a bigger surface area. And because of this increased surface area, it means more air can go over the wing at once, which means it generates even more lift, because so you can add another arrow now. And yeah, that's pretty much it really for the lift. It's kind of like this. So this is with a flap, and then without a flap it looks like this. So I have to keep on because to find another whiteboard or a big whiteboard would be better, but than that. So we'll use that demonstration again in a minute, but obviously wings haven't been like this the whole time. Before, wings were just square. But you can see the actual shape of wings, and I just thought of this now while I was looking at them by just looking at a model. So as you can see here, this is the wing that I've taken off of the A350, and you can see it's not a flat, it's a curved shape again. Not as obviously curved as what I'd done, but you can see the flat bottom, and the A350's is a bit different. Obviously this is to a model, so this is actually the start of the wing box. It's isn't the full wing. The wing would cut off about here, but you can see how pretty much a flat bottom and then a curved top that meets in one edge at the back. Also with, oh god, let me put this back. Also with other models that I have, for example, the 747 should be really easy to take the wing off, it's very old. Yes, and I'm not talking about how old the aircraft actually is in general, because it is an old aircraft, but actually how old my model is. And this is a way better example. So as you can see, don't get messed up with all the flap tracks, but you've got the flat bottom, which ends here, and then you've got the curved top that ends in the exact same point, which is there. So as you can see, that is how, and you know, when you're travelling through the air, I don't have a wind tunnel, you know, but you go and watch a YouTube video of someone with a wind tunnel, and they have the wing, and they don't really use these models, they make a bit bigger model so you can actually see it properly. But they use smoke or whatever, which sucks it in. So you've got the smoke machine, puts the smoke out in the air, sucks it in like an engine. So it brings it back. They use it for F1, motorsport as well. But as you can see, this, you know, you're flying through, and it just shows you how the air travels over the wing. It's very cool to watch. Definitely watch one. They're very cool. So yeah, that's how planes generate lift, and that is pretty much, I would say, how they fly. I mean, obviously it's not. There's so many different components, like everything. So everything makes an aircraft fly. The vertical stabilizer, it stabilizes the aircraft. Kind of like a winglet, but it's up as such. These horizontal stabilizers do the same. You can't fly a plane without horizontal stabilizers, without a tail. There's just the things you need. Then you've also got the nose. Well, the nose makes, because if it was just a square, how much drag would that produce? If it was just, let me take this off. If this was just a big square instead, so if we got the cockpit window and it just went fuel, like right down the side like that, it would create so much drag, so much fuel, more fuel needed. It wouldn't be as fuel efficient and, quite frankly, not as aerodynamic. But with the nose, well, its main job is it covers the radar dish, which obviously gives all the signals and Wi-Fi and stuff like that. Also with the pitot tubes that is in front of the nose cone, behind the nose cone is the pitot tubes, which gives all the readings to the flight deck. Also, you get pitot tubes on the wings, the engines and stuff like that. But the nose cone also breaks up the air. You think the aircraft flying through the air, and if it was just a square, it'd be like that going through. But instead it's a controlled, so it all splits off as such. It all splits off around the aircraft. And that's why more modern planes are having more noses like this. More noses that are just, instead of like long noses like a 737 or 747 and such, little small 1 point, all the way back. Also, though, again, the engines, which we'll talk about in a minute, and the winglets, which we'll also talk about, they have a massive role in helping the aircraft fly, reducing drag, fuel usage, like cutting that down. So winglets, they may only be small things, but they're not actually that small. Small things compared to the aircraft that actually can play a major role in helping the aircraft performance and overall flying. Because obviously, if you didn't have engines, you wouldn't have any thrust. Just like gliders and such, they don't have engines, but they get like catapulted, which is like kind of their one and only engine, and then they use the hot and cold patches of air to climb. But when it comes to the engines, I'll take an engine off, they have gotten a lot bigger over years. And obviously, not all my models are to scale, so I can't really prove that as such, because this isn't a 1 to 200 scale of a 747, when this is a 1 to 200 scale of an A350. You see, just that wouldn't be right. But this is a 747 engine, and this is an A350's engine, a lot bigger engine. They are Rolls-Royce Trent XWB engines, off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure the A350 has. So, why have engines got bigger, and why don't they just use the same engine for every plane? So first off, people say the bigger the engine, the more thrust it makes, which sometimes is true, but not always. So engines, they work in... There's two parts to an engine. You've got the inside and the outer. And I have a model, which I'll show you in a second. But the inside is where the fuel ignites with the air, which then creates a thrust out the back of the jet engine. And the outer is not really like a... The outer, it provides oxygen to the cabin. Also, it cools the engine down as well. because but the inter bit is so hot. It needs a way of cooling down, and that's why if you were to look for an engine as well, you would see black in the middle, in like a little middle circle, and then, but on the outsides, you can see through it, that is the outer bit of the engine, and that goes straight to the back. So, yeah, you can see. So if you look for your trying through the camera, so if you were to look down there, you can see, my finger. See my finger behind there? And that is the outer bit, and then this in the middle, this bit here, this black bit, is the inner bit. Obviously it's a lot bigger in real life, but that is what it's for. And then the casings will come off, and you've got all the stuff in between the casings before you actually get inside the engine. But that's how it works. So this is my aircraft model, engine model, sorry. I'll take it off of its stand, which will be easier to look at. So, forget about the wire. The wire isn't there in real life. You don't have just a wire sticking out. But this is, the engine, ladies and gentlemen. These are the fan blades. These are the stuff that pulls air in. It's broken, so that's why it makes a silly sound, so I won't spin that too much. These are the fan blades. This is what pulls the air in. So in the middle, as you can see here, we've got the inner bit. And then this would all be the outer. So the air comes in, so air, and it gets compressed. All these get compressed. Each is smaller. It compresses the air. So this here is a combustion chamber. It doesn't really look like this in real life, but just for the thing. So this is a combustion chamber. In a combustion chamber, well, if you know what combustion is, it mixes the fuel, the aviation fuel mixes with the cold air blowing in from the engine, and it ignites, and out the back, providing thrust. And obviously, the more thrust per we have, the more fuel it mixes with, and bigger air intake, which means more fuel, more thrust, more like fire, more thrust and stuff. Yeah. Now, jet engines, like military jet engines, they work similarly but in a different way. They're a bit more advanced than a commercial airliner's engine. But so you come here, so the air will come in, so this fan blade spinning, wow, and then the air comes in. There it goes through here into the first little ones which spin, compressing the air really small, and then it gets to where the fuel ignites. It ignites with the fuel, and it goes all the way back, and then these will spin at the back when there is fuel igniting. So they all spin, which is obviously most of the time. So these will spin all the way around, making it all spin, and then the outer bit, it cools it down also because of the heatness of this and the cold air pretty much just escapes. It just goes back. Contrails though, well, the contrails come from when it comes out. Obviously it's so hot, but in the air it's so cold. That's why all this cold air is coming in and not warm air. It's so cold that this fuel kind of like condenses and freezes and stuff. Obviously the temperature has to be just right, but this thing really hot, thrusty gas as such, and then really cold air. It mixes together and makes contrails. If you want to find out more about contrails and what they are and what's in them, then you can also check out my other video after this one, obviously. So the contrails come out after, obviously. That's why it isn't like straight out, because obviously it mixes with the cold air. The outer part works better when it's slower moving air instead of fast moving air like the inner bit. So what they actually do is they make, obviously you can't see it because of this, the cover, which will be this is where all the electric and wires would be. And then you got the casing that comes off like that. So they've got a little bolt as such, and it slows the air down here and it pushes the air really fast. It just works better. I don't know actually why, but it does. Yeah. So that's kind of the engine, and they get bigger and bigger. Well, because before, you look at the old 737s or 747s, they're really tiny and dinky. And with the old the originals of 737s, the 100 and 200, the engines were like underneath the wing, and the air intake was just over the wing, and it would go back. It went straight under the wing. But now the engines are in front of the wing, with a little bit underneath, tiny bit, and this is because, well, they've got bigger, they've got heavier, which means they need to lift the engines forward. This was a massive problem when they had the new 737 models, which obviously aren't that like new anymore. The 787-9s and the Maxes, and the new versions of the 737 family. And because of this, they had a big problem where the plane would go back, like stall as such, because the engines were so big and heavy. They would go back, stall, and the plane would just fall. That's why they had MCAST, which is on most modern airlines today. It's like an automatic trim as such. It moves back wings, which I'm just going to use like non-aviation terms. Back wings, obviously I'd use horizontal stabilizers, but it moves the back wings up and down, and it kind of like cancels out the aircraft wanting to stall because of these engines. Now, obviously, this is why we had 2 737 crashes in 2017 and 18, 2 fatal crashes in less than 6 months apart. But we have this, and because of this, it's kind of a game changer as such, because it means you can have heavier, better, more fuel-efficient engines on aircraft like the A350, 777, A330s, and actually any plane, any aircraft. And as you can see, for the 747, the engines are still quite small, but on the dash, on the 8 and like really new 747 models, which like really new, you've got bigger engines, Rolls-Royce bigger engines, like this in front of the wing, and that's what we've seen with all aircraft actually. The 747, 747, 777, all these old amazing aircraft getting bigger engines, and this is just because the airlines, they want the most fuel efficient engines, just like the most fuel efficient aircraft as possible. And the bigger the engine, the more thrust it can make with the least amount of fuel is the most fuel efficient. And also winglets play a massive part into making aircraft fuel efficient, which brings me on to my next point. Winglets, yay! Anyway, winglets. There's many different types of winglets. Many different types of winglets. I have favourite winglets. I have 2, 3. Okay, I like pretty much lots of winglets. My favourite type of winglet though is the shark clip, and that's like most. These are found on the older A320 models. Okay, not my favourite winglet. I just prefer them. I'll tell you why. Because especially on A320s, I quite like the older model, to be honest. Obviously the Neo looks better, but I actually quite like the older model. Maybe it's just because the first A320 Neo I went on was an Iberia A320 Neo, and trust me, that cabin, there was some experience. That was a horrible cabin. It was so sparkly and like it hurt you. 6 o'clock in the morning, okay, 6 o'clock in the morning, you walk on a very bright plane, it really wakes you up, and it's just sparkly everywhere. It's not like sparkly like disco ball, like you got the window, right? You got the window case and stuff, like you can take off. And just the cabin walls were like, mine was Virgin Atlantic. If it was like red, it'd be Virgin Atlantic, right? It was like white, and there's just little sparkle dots in it. It was really weird. It hurt my eyes as such. So, trying to lay down and, really bright, and then you open your eyes and it's got flashbang because all these sparkles and stuff. Anyway, that's right. That was never again will I fly Iberia. Probably, yeah. Anyway, moving on to Sparkly Iberia cabins. From Sparkly Iberia cabins, we have winglets. Like I said, they're very fuel efficient, and the problem is that if you didn't have a winglet and you ended the wing, just like on here, if you just ended the wing like this, that was it. It was just cut off. Just boom. Right, you get shockwaves, and there's like a little hurricane at the end of the wing. So it's just ended, right? All the air is really uneven now at the end of the wing, and you get a massive hurricane shockwave as such. So if you think about it, you get like that. They are very messy, but that's what you get, like little swirls of pockets of air at the end. And with this pocket of air, you've got all the air particles around, and it's all flowing over the wing nicely, and then you just get to the end. And when you get to the end, it just cuts off, which creates a big bit of drag because the air is trying to go into 100 different places instead of one singular point like winglets do. As you see on all winglets, they have one little point. They all end up at the end. The little point. Other points just at the end. Yeah, they all have a point that they all go to at the end. And this is because, well, it creates less drag because the air is all going to one point. It's all still flowing over the wing, and then instead of a massive big air hurricane in the sky, instead it just makes a little one, a little swirl of air, and it flies off and it goes. That's why you get vortexes, and this is because of the shock waves on the other parts of the wing. But if you didn't have the winglets, it would just make a big shock wave, and which makes the air which makes the plane more turbulent, not being a good, making it not that good for passenger experience, very turbulent, and stuff. But with the winglets, it all focuses it into one point, makes a little swell, and it's more fuel efficient because even though it obviously adds weight to the plane, obviously, instead of just cutting it off, it makes it more, obviously, it obviously reduces the drag, which means that it saves on fuel because it's needing less thrust to actually get through this air. Without the winglets, just ended it off like this. All this drag, you think of these little tornadoes as drags. All this drag, meaning you need more fuel and more thrust to overcome all this. But with the winglets, where it's only at one point, it just slices the air as such in half and make way, we're coming through, which reduces drag. Also, this is why, see the airplane wings, they're swept back as such, and they're not just a square, because the lift is created I forgot the name of the shape, but it goes over the wing like that. That's kind of how the lift works. Obviously, the 787, the wings go like this, 22 degrees. The wings bend in flight 22 degrees. Quite a lot. So which means 787 wings are tested so much. They, if you've ever seen a video of aircraft wings get tested when they're built, they bend them so much, literally crazy amount. It's 40 to 60 odd degrees they bend some aircraft wings. Crazy amount. Over double the aircraft will ever actually experience. But it's a test. Just aircraft always get tested on stuff that would never actually happen. The passengers never actually experience, but they test it. It gives them reassurance that actually if this aircraft was to bank, 5 degrees over, it'd be okay. Because, the A350 can bank to about 67 degrees, which is a lot. So, obviously if you're banking at 20 degrees and it goes 25 over and like that, oh no. But you're safe because it can bank to about 67. So you can go 40, what did I say? 25, didn't I? You go 42 over. 42 more degrees. Never happen, but it can. And if it gives a reassurance that it would never happen, but if you did go over, it's okay. Yeah, so swept wings, and this is also to do with shockwaves. So if you think the wing is coming, things coming over, if it's a square, well then you got. But with the swept, so it means planes can travel faster. To be honest, planes can travel faster. So with these amazing wing designs, with the winglets, with their fuel efficient engines, they can fly faster, get into the destination quicker, saving on fuel, and other costs like aircraft maintenance and stuff like that, meaning that it's cheaper for passengers, cheaper for the airline, and overall saves money and it's better for the environment, which obviously is the main goal when any airline buys an aircraft. They want the most fuel efficient aircraft. That's why Boeing, Airbus, Embraer, Bombardier, they're all trying so hard to get all their aircraft as fuel efficient as possible, with the best engines, with the best aircraft designs. And that's why aircraft are taking ages to be developed, because there's so many tests and so many things they can do to try and make it more fuel efficient. They just have to figure out how to do it. And also, with Boeing's track record of their new aircraft, it's probably a good thing that the 777X is being delayed quite a lot. I think the FIA is trying to save us from any uncalculated disasters that could have happened, and maybe even train the pilots this time on new aircraft instead of let them play around, because 737s didn't go that well when they launched. That's enough for the, the quiet zone. Well, no one's from Boeing is actually watching this, are they? And if they are, then comment down below and subscribe, please. So I can say what I want. Now, personally, I'm more an Airbus guy. Yeah, my favourite plane is a 787. I've always said this. If it was like an A3, I don't know. If the 787 was an Airbus plane, okay, if it joined this side and these didn't face each other, these joined each other, Airbus would be my favourite. See, I'm 80% Airbus and 20% Boeing, because I like all the Airbus planes, but then there's one plane that sticks out of all of them, which is the best, which is 787, which obviously many people say the A350 is the best plane, and I rate that, because actually if there was no 787 and there was an A350, that would be my favourite plane. The A350 is my second favourite plane. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video. That's how planes fly. Key points, I guess, to remember is bigger engines, better fuel efficient engines. The nose, it splits up the air. The wings are shaped in a way where the warm air pushes the wing up, which creates lift. The cold air goes over the top. The flaps increase the surface area, so on takeoff, it gives us more lift. The winglets, they reduce drag because they bring all the air into one point, saving on money because of saving fuel with less drag. And quickly, before we go, the horizontal stabilizers are above the main wing, because before they weren't, it would create problems, because the shock waves from wings, because they do make little shock waves just here, this is why we have swept wings, they would disrupt the airflow over. It doesn't really happen now on modern commercial planes, but older military planes, it would disrupt the airflow, which meant if aircraft was diving to bomb or whatever military planes do, it would mean that the back gets so much more lift. If you're going like that, the back gets so much more lift, really in a dive, an uncontrollable dive where you're just gonna slam into the ground. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video. This is the last one before Madeira's series. And Madeira's series, we'll start off with the packing for Madeira. Then we'll have our flight videos, our flight reviews, whatever you want to call them. Then we'll have our travel vlogs. I was going to do that. Travel vlogs with pictures and videos and stuff like that. And then we've got the flight home. Another flight home. Okay, this is to be decided. This is because it's either going to have New Year special or thingy. I would like to do some plane spotting. You might get a plane spotting video as well. You might not. There will be a new playlist from the Madeira series. We're expecting about 4 to 5 videos in the Madeira series, including everything in the Madeira series. But yeah, it's going to be enjoying. Next week will be the packing for Madeira. I'll have a suitcase in my room. These won't be here. There'll be a suitcase. So my mat for my model aircraft, I put that back under my bed, and I have a suitcase there for Madeira, ready to start packing. And I'll go through pretty much the essentials that I bring, especially YouTube perspective, what I do, what I bring actually on the plane and stuff. Tips for flying as well, a little like this is good because it helps with this and stuff. And also tips for travel sickness. And I won't lie, on short haul aircraft, sometimes I get travel sickness. I have been sick on an aircraft before. It was the Iberia flight, yeah, but I've been sick on an aircraft before. On short haul, for some reason, short haul, it just, yeah. I'll give you some tips of how to combat that motion sickness, travel sickness, or whatever. And yeah, so that's in the next video. I hope you look forward to that. I hope you enjoyed this video as well. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Please subscribe. It's free and you can unsubscribe anytime you want. And it really helps and supports this channel. Please like the video and give me suggestions of any videos you want to see in the near future. We can always fit it in timetable. Share with all your family and friends, especially if they are curious about planes or want to learn a bit more about planes or whatever. Share with all your family and friends. Just get more people know about the 787 Dude channel. Comment any questions, suggestions, and if you want to give me any tips or anything like that, anything, just comment down in the comment section below. I'm Jake, this is 787 Dude channel. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.